another person, another object, in relation to that, perceiving that makes me unhappy. And then from then onwards, I associate this object with something negative. I see it as negative and I dislike it. In the capacity, it may lead to aversion and anger. One good example, I believe, is when I was little, we were having some picnic and I ate sausage that was not okay. But I also had pears. And I threw up, and in my mind, it was the pears. So ever since that time, I hated pears. The pear wasn't to blame. It was the sausage. But because I had this unpleasant feeling, and I associated it with the pear, right? To me, pears were, and I used to crave them. And then I had a total aversion to them. So this is similar. This is like how it's bizarre. It's so bizarre because I can't blame the pear. It was the sausage. But this is true for like anything. This is just an example where I'm actually just wrong about blaming the pear. But the point here is we're wrong about even blaming the sausage. Because it's my stomach. It's, the bacteria that in relation to my stomach. I mean, a dog would be very healthy eating that rotten meat, right? So in relation to this dog, it was very healthy meat. In relation to me, it was rotten meat. So only in relation, but to my mind, rotten meat is rotten in and of itself. But it's only in relation to me. Right? It's only in relation to me that I call it that. In and of itself, it's neither rotten, it's neither delicious, nor that. But that's how it seems. So it's negative. In the case of something negative, I associate it with sickness, in the case of the pear, and therefore I dislike it. Aversion arises. But that's not so bad. Pears are not going to be a big problem. But people, right? I don't feel good in their presence. They do something that I find unacceptable. Their mother loves them for it, but I find it unacceptable. So this person's bad. This person, okay? And so that's the exaggerating attitude. And this is what he says here. So, how do we get rid of it? We started at the end. Mental fabrications, they give rise to conceptual thought. Here, mental fabrication is the misapprehension of reality. That comes from conceptual thought. Sorry, the word conceptual thought here means exaggerated attitude. Sometimes, because of the poetry of verses, they use words that need to be explained. Conceptual thought here, actually according to the commentaries, means exaggerated thought. So our misapprehension of reality, mental fabrications, fabricating this intrinsic existence, gives rise to conceptual thought, namely to an exaggerated attitude, and that gives rise to other afflictions, anger, attachment, jealousy, etc. That creates exaggerated actions called karma. And so we have to eliminate those. If we want to be liberated, if we want to be out of this state, therefore it says, through eliminating karma and affliction, there is liberation. We need to get rid of karma and affliction. But karma and affliction actually have their origin, their cause is the exaggerating attitude, conceptual thought. And it's not just any conceptual thought, it's a specific one here, the exaggerating attitude. These exaggerating attitudes, as well as karma and afflictions, they come from mental fabrications. Our misapprehension of reality, perceiving that which exists interdependently to exist in and of itself, inherently. Fabrication, those mental fabrications, they cease through understanding emptiness. Through understanding emptiness. Within emptiness, or through understanding emptiness, in the sense that the mind that perceives there to be independent existence, well, you can only get rid of that by understanding the opposite. Okay? So the example they sometimes give, I sometimes give about a monster in a closet, right? If you imagine there's a monster in your cupboard, how do you get rid of that fear? Take a sleeping pill, all right, For a while, you fall asleep, you'll forget about the fear. Or you open your bathroom and check whether there's someone in there. Yeah, well, at least there's no one in the bathroom. But the only way to directly get rid of this sense that there's some monster in my closet is to check. Is it there or not? Once you understand there's nothing in my cupboard, there's no monster, there's no ghost, there's nothing in there, your fear naturally subsides. So that's the same idea here. So it's through understanding the emptiness, the lack of such a self, that we get rid of all our problems. So this is why I explained verse number 5, which is so important. It tells us exactly how we get into that problem. Can we keep the questions again? Alright, then number 6. Alright, so this we need to understand. We need to understand the self, as well as other things, don't exist the way they appear. Our misapprehension leads to the problem the way it's described in number 5, and it's only through understanding that the object of the mind, that is the root cause doesn't exist, that we can liberate ourselves from all the other undesired types of minds. And how do we get to that understanding? Well, the Buddha taught it, but the Buddha taught it very gently. He taught it gently because initially he talked about himself, right? If you listen to the teachings, initially he suggests there's I, there's others. Like the way the Buddha uses language, it seems to reinforce our sense of an I. Because like, wow, people would freak out if they hear about Buddhism and the first thing is like, you don't exist. So, well, nowadays you do hear teaching, but you know, in the past, initially, people didn't mention that right away. And then, so initially he taught that, in particular when people didn't believe that there's past and future lives, there's nothing, so the Buddha would say, no, there's just self that goes on from one life to the next. Okay? But then, the next step would be, well, there's no self, actually. The I doesn't exist. But don't worry about the rest. And then eventually, well, there's neither self nor selflessness. Nothing exists inherently. Not only is there no solid I that can be found, but even the lack of an I doesn't exist inherently. Neither the self nor no self exists inherently. And what is actually everything what we express, even the words we use, oh gosh, words, we're like in the 21st century, this has become such an issue. We have to be so politically correct because we believe in the inherent existence of words so much. So this becomes very clear in the West. Tibetans, because they're much more in tune with the Dharma, they say it's just a word. So they give each other kind of naughty nicknames. One of my classmates was called Acne. And our cook was called Fat Cook. Dakpa. Manching Dakpa. Fat Cook. It was okay. It was alright. So, actually, now, I'm not saying we should call each other acne and fatty and stuff. No. All I'm trying to say is like, when someone hurts you, someone uses a word and it hurts you, think again. Is there something intrinsic in that word? Is there if someone calls you a jerk, well, either you're a jerk, then they've told you what you already are, and if you're not, then they were just plainly wrong. What's the big deal, right? So, words are really interesting. We don't really think about that much, but a sense of inherent, there's something intrinsic within the word. Of course, the example I'm going to give now, you've all heard me talk about it, many of you. How we have a sense, a word inherently means something. What's the dish again? What's the dish again? No.
Shakshuka?
Shakshuka. Yes. The story of when I was in a restaurant and I was with a friend and I looked through the menu, I was very hungry, and I went through the menu and I saw this word, shakshuka. And I said, oh, that's a pretty word. If I had a daughter, I'd call her shakshuka. I didn't realize what it meant. To me, it just meant it sounded beautiful to me, shakshuka. Now I know what it is, but at that time, and I never forget that because, of course, my friends started laughing. It's just like, you know, what are you talking about? So to her, that intrinsically meant a tomato egg dish. To me, it just sounded pretty. I was thinking, yes, with names, it's the same thing. We have these old-fashioned names. No one wants to be called that. And then our neighbor calls her little daughter that, and suddenly it becomes a fashionable name, right? So it seems to be something intrinsic within the word, fashionable, old-fashionable, something abusive in that word. And I noticed over the years, you know, like, people are no longer old. They're elderly now. Right? They're no more old people, they're always just elderly because it's become almost like negative, abusive to call someone old, elderly. So bizarre. Or the word for someone who's got mental problems, right? Usually it was mad, then it became insane, mad, you know, and then what is it? mentally now it's challenged, impaired, right? I'm not saying there's anything wrong. Of course, the motivation is not to hurt someone, but it's our belief that there's something intrinsic in the word, right? And so it takes on some negative connotation, and we can no longer use it. Now we need to change it. There's nothing wrong with doing that, not to hurt someone. My point is, we believe that there's something within the words, right? But actually, there's nothing intrinsic in the words. It's what we make it to mean. And we can change it. Alright, so words are fashionable and unfashionable. And again, there's nothing from the side of the object. It's just how we perceive it. So here words are mentioned. So with regard to what is expressed, so even the object we express doesn't exist in and of itself. Even emptiness, when we talk about emptiness, even that doesn't really get at what we're talking about. So even that, what the words express, it seems to exist in and of itself, but it doesn't. Because the objects of mind, they're repudiated, they're negated, basically. The objects, just because we think of them, doesn't make them truly existent. We believe just because we think about them, there's some real, like some actual existence of them. But no, they're just thoughts in the mind, right? They don't exist, so they exist because we think them up. So our sense of self is actually, it's just thoughts. I'm like this, I'm like that, I'm like this, right? And of course, I'm not saying there's no basis for saying so. Sure, if I have my mind has certain qualities, then I think, well, I'm like that. But our sense of self is actually a collage of thoughts. I'm this, I'm that. And the problem is we believe we are really that. And oftentimes we're stuck in it. I mean, it's totally plastic. We can think, well, I'm really intelligent, I'm really energetic. And then that's one of the causes and conditions that makes us become that. So we're not really stuck. We are that which our mind wants us to be. That's why we can become a Buddha. We can become awakened. This is how tantric practice works. You visualize yourself to already be there. And that creates the causes and conditions to get there. I mean, it's like a modern athlete. You believe yourself to win the race in your mind, you already win it. In your mind, like I once saw this video about this girl who was like a gymnast, and she couldn't do this really complicated movement, but she visualized in her mind she could do it, and she did it so many times that in the end she could do it. Because she thought through it, and then she could do it. So, therefore, basically our minds creates our sense of self, and we keep reinforcing it. I am this, I am that, I'm this, I'm that. And the problem is we think we're stuck in it. But we're not stuck in it. If you use it in a way, if you understand how the self is actually just created by the mind, we can create who we are. We can become who we want to become. And Buddhahood is basically about that. Recognizing what is there. We label right now temporary states of mind, and we're stuck with that. Those states of minds can be gone, and we can label based on our true nature of the mind, which is the true nature, is the nature of a Buddha nature. And once we remove these other states of mind on base of which we keep labeling and restricting ourselves, well, then we're able to what's called awaken and reach the state of Buddha. So basically, therefore, here it says that what is expressed, those words don't exist in and of themselves, the thoughts don't exist in and of themselves, they're not intrinsically generated, nor do they intrinsically go out of existence, because suchness, the actual way in which phenomena exist, is just like nirvana. It's like nirvana in a sense, neither nirvana exists in and of itself, nor suchness. None of these things really exist truly, they're just labeled. Of course, based on certain objects, not just randomly called this, that, and the other. Then he goes on to say, everything is real and everything is not real. Both real and unreal. Neither unreal nor real. That is the Buddha's teaching. And then again, it's similar to what it says in verse 6, that the Buddha taught people according to what they can understand. He gently brought them. First he said, everything is real. Don't worry, everything is real. Right? So talking about, for instance, well, Lama Tsongkhapa explains this verse slightly differently from other commentators. I like the way Lama Tsongkhapa talks about it. He says, he talks about the process leading to an understanding of suchness, taking into consideration impermanence, good old impermanence, the fact that everything changes all the time. And it's said that an understanding of that ever-changing nature of everything, all the impermanent things, the objects we perceive, that will get rid of the coarser kind of mind that holds onto some solid existence. I mean, if you just think, and this is where science comes in again, telling us everything around us, it seems so solid. To our mind, it's solid. But for a quantum physiker, I mean, this is like atoms, ever-changing, they're never the same, it's all changing. And if you start meditating, well, obviously your thoughts are always changing. They're similar, maybe, to the ones, but they're never the same. You never have exactly the same thoughts, just similar ones, because it's always changing. Everything is constantly changing. And so, then it becomes clear when we say there's a table here today, there's a table there tomorrow. What we call the table today and what we call the table tomorrow is not the same thing. Yesterday's table, yesterday's atoms that make up the table are gone. This is a new table. So if this was in and of itself a table, if it didn't depend on us calling it that, it would have to be the same yesterday and the same today. Right? Otherwise we couldn't call it table. That might be alright. Because it was, but we just label table on the basis of something that is totally different from moment to moment. So mind and body, we have a sense there's this I that's the same, but how can it be if our mind totally changes and our body totally changes? What is that I that remains the same? It's only the mind believing it to be the same. That's it. So it's a misapprehension with regard to reality. And so the Buddha gently, initially when he started teaching those people who were not totally ready for it, like starting off with someone who was a beginner like us. So the Buddha basically fast taught, well, things are like this and that, this is a table, this is that, but he didn't talk about them changing moment by moment, because if you think about it, things start disappearing. No, he said they'll exist for some time, they have a continuum, and then it goes out of existence. Okay? So just talked about a table will at some point no longer be a table. That kind of coarser type of impermanence. So like death, for instance. Right? Like he seemed to suggest we're kind of the same throughout one life, and then we die. That's a coarse type of impermanence, right? An impermanence that we can perceive. That is what he said, real. That's real. And then he introduced subtle impermanence. But it's not actually the way it appears. Things are changing all the time. Nothing is the same from one moment to the next. So if you say, well, we talk about these three characteristics that, for instance, an object such as the table has. It comes into existence, it remains, and it goes out of existence, right? Now, if you think about it in that order, first it comes into existence, then it remains, then it goes out of existence, that is very coarse. Because the problem is when you say it remains for some time, it seems to suggest it's permanent, right? One is there, it's permanent. But actually, those three happen at the same time. Something comes into existence at the same time, or has come into existence, at the same time when it abides and when it goes out of existence. Those happen at the same time. That is subtle impermanence. So the moment it's there, it's already going out of existence. But for that moment, it's also there. And so when you think about like a table, from moment to moment, there's a moment there, but in that moment it goes out of existence, and a new one, and a new one, and a new one. So the question that may arise is, how can we say this table is here for some time? we say it abides, right? We say, okay, from moment to moment, we get that. But how can we say, this is a table for 1 year or for 10 years, however long we call this a table? And so one of my teachers gave this really good example. Geshe took Kelsang. He gave this example. Imagine a person is jumping off a plane with a parachute. And what happens when you're jumping off the plane? You're falling, right? There's a time you spend in the sky before you land on Earth, land on the ground. So in between that time, you're falling. But you're never in the same spot. You're falling, 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 falling. So we apply the same word, falling, falling, falling. But in actuality, this person is always in a different spot, right? But it's still okay to call it falling, although in actuality, the one who's falling is always in a different place. Likewise with the table. Although, from moment to moment it's different, it's never the same table because its atoms have changed, we can still call it table. We call it table, 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 until the main characteristics that enable us to call it a table, if they're gone, if those characteristics can no longer be found, then I stop calling it a table. But in the meantime, that doesn't mean it was the same table from moment to moment. In the same way as falling from the sky. You're always in a different place. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? No?
Falling is a process, I understand it.
It's a process. This table, I know, in Hebrew you have the word process, and everyone likes that word, right? It's a process. The table goes through this process of being ever-changing. So we believe it's a table in and of itself, because we call it a table from moment to moment, right? It was a table yesterday, it's a table today, but what we called a table yesterday is totally different from what we call a table today. Am I making sense?
It doesn't change the place.
Pardon?
The atoms have changed, but it's in the same place, while falling is...
In the same place? Well, here in this case, it is in the same place, all right, but I'm not referring to the place, I'm referring to a changing nature that despite that being there, I call it falling, as if falling was the same, but actually falling in the sense like being in a different place. We just label falling on the basis of that. So likewise with the table, it's never the same table, but I can still call it that. But to my mind, it seems it's a table, good old table, same table, but that's just not possible. So, to take a little bit further, this table and another table, it seems like there is some tableness that they both have in common, right? But what do I call a table? What is the basis for calling this a table? And what is the basis for calling something else a table? Is a totally different basis, right? But in my mind, I generalize. And this is where, for instance, some other philosophers, I already mentioned them, the Vaisheshikas, they're called Vaisheshikas. And they talk about universal tableness. They actually have a whole philosophy on that. There is a universal table. And when you have a table, you make one, then it gets embraced by that tableness. That's how it feels to us, isn't it? So we generalize. We have a sense there's this overarching table that kind of embraces everything that is a table. Now, racism comes from that way of thinking, right? I have a certain race, someone else seems to have a certain race, both have that race, they're embraced by that race, right? Although what makes this person, I don't know, French, and what makes someone else French or German or what have you, the basis of imputation is different, right? A totally different person, based on which, and based on a certain passport, I label German, and based on another person, I label. But there's no Germanness they have in common that's other than the one I label. And then if I don't like that German because they're German, well, it doesn't mean those qualities can be found in that other person. So when we generalize, oftentimes we feel there's this overarching kind of like-ness. And if one has certain qualities or no qualities, then we believe them the other person to have too. But it's a totally different basis of imputation. Of course, sometimes there can be similarities, but racism goes further. It generalizes, right? And this is racism. It's in terms of ethnicity, in terms of gender. It's called gender bias, in terms of what have you. So it's all to do with our sense there's something within the object, and not only that, it leaves that object and embraces every table, every person, every Israeli, every German, etc. So you see how our mind kind of first just labels on the basis of similarities and then believes them to be the same, non-changing, and solidly that. Am I making sense? I know, this is full. I mean, Nora, she wanted you. She told me she wanted you. This is really, really difficult. And I'm putting into this class years and years of what I learned. Like just different aspects. And for some of you it may be easier. For some of you it's harder. But I might as well hit you with the whole thing. And then hopefully you can get through it as we go on. Allow me to be a little bit further. What time do you have to stop?
7:30.
We've got enough time. We have time for questions. All right? Just let me go a little bit, and please remember your question. So here in verse 8, he's basically they're saying that first the Buddha just said, okay, everything's there, don't worry. You know, things sometimes go out of existence, but don't worry about them changing all the time. Didn't talk about it. And then, as a next step, he said, all right, now your mind is ready. Mind is a little bit more receptive. Things change all the time. So that sense of reality starts disappearing because from moment to moment it's not the same as it was before. Right? We have a sense, of course, it's the same, but in actuality, situations are different, and it's only our holding on to it being the same that makes it possible for us to believe they're not changing all the time. And we don't want them to change. We actually hold on to it. We don't want them to change, and we believe to a certain degree they don't change. So then the Buddha explained, well, things are changing all the time. But from one perspective, then they're both real and unreal. So from one perspective, we can say, well, conventionally, we can say, yes, it's still a table. But what makes one moment of the table a table is not the same as another moment of a table. The basis of imputation is different now. But we're not aware of that. And then eventually he said, nothing is real, and things are neither unreal nor real, because ultimately nothing exists. Independently, nothing exists anyway. Okay? So this is how Lama Tsongkhapa explains it, how the Buddha kind of went step by step to kind of prepare people for, well, what he had to say. And so the characteristic of suchness now is that suchness is not dependent on another person. Another person may explain it to you, but you will never understand it if you just leave it at that. You need to come to an understanding yourself. No way you can understand it just because someone said so. You really have to come to an insight. So if someone tells you, hummus is delicious, well, you won't understand until you taste it yourself. And it's at peace, it's free from inherent existence, it's not fabricated by mental fabrication. Suchness itself lacks inherent existence. It itself exists interdependently. It's not conceptualized. It's not really the object of thought. If you just think about it, you need to experience it. Just intellectualizing about it won't help for you to understand it. It's without distinctions. There's no distinction between the lack of inherent existence of a table or the lack of inherent existence of a cushion. It's only conventionally they differ, but they're the same in the sense that nothing can be found from the side of the object. So there's no distinction from the point of view of that. That is the characteristic of suchness. Oops. And so, whatever arises only does so in dependence on something else. And so when you look at this something else, if it existed in and of itself, it would either be the same as the thing it arises from, or it would be totally different. Again, that same idea as we described earlier. If something existed independently and it would arise from something else, either it would be identical with that one thing, right? It would be identical with that, or it would have to be totally different. If it were identical, the thing would be permanent